Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. But as we all know, I do not do this program by myself.
That's right. My name is Mike Pioworski, coming to you live from the East Coast. It's the coast with the most, from the co-host with the most here on The Rundown. Two-way views, conservative news, and Craig, guess what day it is?
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Who's ready?
Throw Punch Thursday, bitch.
Okay, Mike, I have to share. I have been accused of promoting violence every single time that I show this clip, and I have to say, I'm guilty as charged.
Who said that? Let's beat them up.
Is it really violence, though? Or is it just a lesson learned?
It's lessons learned. It's lessons learned. You know, it reminds me, every time I see that guy go down, I think, down goes Frazier.
Down goes Frazier.
Down goes Frazier. Here's a story. At one point in Afghanistan, we were done waiting to ship out. We're sitting at some remote base in this big, there's barriers, big bunkers around us.
Right.
And we're nowhere with their threats. So everybody's like sitting on top of these mounds, right? And they're calling people up one by one to get the last bit of paperwork. And they called this one guy up, Frazier, this young sergeant, and he fell. And he fell down the whole thing. And he fell. And the entire crowd of like 100 people started with, down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Like everybody, like on cue.
I don't think that I cannot think of a sports call that is more memorable or remembered by more people. They may not even know where it came from than that call by Howard Cosell.
Yeah, I mean the others you got to dig back into baseball into like the 60s and stuff like that, 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one for people our generation. It would have to be down goes Frazier.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad for Howard Cosell. His the way his career went out was just over something stupid.
He was fun to listen to because he did every sport, but every sport he broadcast sounded like he hated it. It's just like,
I can't believe I'm here doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, what was funny was a lot of people like, oh, he's racist, yada, yada. But I'm like, you do know that like he was probably Muhammad Ali's biggest fan and did a lot to promote Muhammad Ali. He was antagonistic with him, but that was a kind of a banter that they both engaged in.
It was, and listen, he's of that generation where, and I saw this in my grandparents as well, where that they said words then in common phrases that you and I would, lose our livelihood over. But to them, it was just,
this is a real talented colored fella.
Yeah, exactly. Like one time he said, "Look at that monkey go!" Right? And
yeah, well, that's what he got in trouble for. And the worst part about that was, if you saw the play, dude caught the ball, spun around on one hand, and was like one hand on the ground was like this. And I mean,
and that's odd because of all the things that he did say and shouldn't have said.
Yeah,
that one I'm convinced. That could have been a white player. It could have been it could have been anybody, and he would have said the same thing.
He would have said the exact same thing. He was a little guy because remember back then Washington Redskins had the little tiny receivers.
All receivers and running backs were little guys back then. Yep.
Well, no, they were exceptionally little. Theirs were like 5. They were like both like, well, on paper they were 5'9". In reality, they were like 5'7".
Yeah.
But it was anyway. Well, you remember Jimmy the Greek, who got in trouble for basically pointing out, they were like, well, why the preeminence of black athletes in the NFL? And he said, well, it goes back to, if you think back to slavery, you take the big black buck and you made it with the big black woman and you wind up with big, strong kids. And he got fired for that. Yeah, and I'm like, that's kind of what they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
It's unfortunate. But again, how many times have you had to defend someone in your life when they said something? You're like, he's up, bro. He's 80. You don't know what he's saying.
Well, exactly. And that's,
saying,
as I have said repeatedly, because I've seen it happen to many an idiot, and I've seen it happen to many a good person. At 70, right around 70, that there's that switch, that filter that says, we all think things we shouldn't say. Every single one of us. But that filter stops working right around 70.
Yeah.
And
But
those
again, I don't believe he's saying it to be mean.
No.
He's saying it because the filter that he turned it off for 30 or 40 years, he turned that filter off, and now he's back to how he used to talk as a kid when it was acceptable to say those things.
Well, exactly. And it's once again, it's not so much that what he said was wrong. It's just how are people going to take it? And sadly, we've gotten to that point is, and I believe, yes, you should be sensitive to how people are going to take things. But the problem is that people have become more and more sensitive over time over stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Very much so. Agreed.
Very much so, very much so. But we've had enough banter to start the program. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. And we're going to start off with a quick shout out to our sponsors.
Yeah, let's say hello to our friends at Hitman Industries. That's hitmanindustries.net. You want to get yourself an AR barrel, get over there. They got rifle caliber, pistol caliber, any length you desire at hitmanindustries.net. California Republican Assembly fighting a good fight behind enemy lines. You take part in California's future today. If you want the best in tactical concealed holsters on the market, get on over to hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com, hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. That's all one word, no spaces, all caps. Get yourself a nice little discount. And if you want the best in field gear, tactical gear, web gear, law enforcement, security, fire, EMS, they got it all. Just get your group together, get your agency together, place an order at uscombatgear.com where you can get everything except the gun.
That's right, folks. These are our sponsors. They bring us to you so that we can bring you to them. Do us a favor. Do them a favor. Do yourselves a favor. Visit their websites. All you have to do is follow the links in the description of this program. Go there. Check them out, spend some money with them, and make sure you let them know that it was the guys over at The Rundown that sent you. Also, I want to remind you, if you are watching this program live, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, we would love for you guys to go ahead and comment. Would love to hear. I see there are a number of folks who are watching the program live right now. See, we record it now, and then we do a replay where we, if there's any faux pas, if there's any issues with the audio or stuff like that, we replay it in the next hour. So if you want to see it live, if you want to comment, if you want to be a part of the program, go ahead and comment. Let us know who you are, where you're watching us from, and what you think about what we're saying. And, if we don't have to agree with us. All we care about is that your comment is interesting. But do know this, that if you do disagree with us, we do reserve the right to mock you.
You're going under the bus, baby.
Unter die Bus. That is how it will be.
Yep.
That's how we roll. Okay, let's go ahead and get into today's program. I got to admit, it's a little bit of a slow news day, and I could have reported on, I probably should have pulled up some old stories, but I did want to talk about this one. It is kind of an old story, but they're just finally coming out with the numbers on this. The initial program story is this, and this has to do with an EV initiative, or basically the idea was to promote electric vehicles. And I'm not anti-electric vehicle. I actually own a plug-in hybrid, my Jeep Wrangler. I like the idea, but the problem is that I'm always a believer that the way in which the technology is going to work is if you let the market determine it, right? You make it so that let the market, because the market will make sure that there's a product that works, that the people want to buy, and it'll be at the price they will buy it. Well, liberals, Democrats, Biden, like Democrats like to do, decided we're going to try and encourage the market to create these things. And so one of the things they wanted to do was they said, we're going to build charging stations that are going to be all over the country. And that'll make it so people are going to want to drive their electric vehicles all over the country. Well, let's just put it this way. They decided that they were going to spend $7.5 billion. Let me say that again. $1 billion with a B. Look, $1 billion with a B. And they only wound up building 400 electric vehicle chargers. That's right. This is being reported by the Washington Free Beacon. Government Accountability Office slams the program's lack of performance goals with measurable targets and time frames for its activities. It says the Biden administration's $7.5 billion program to install electric vehicle charging stations across the United States has delivered fewer than 400 charging ports since November 2021, according to a Tuesday report by the Government Accountability Office. The EV charging initiative, part of former President Joe Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, has built just 384. So they haven't even built 400. Okay, let's get charging stations at 68 stations, ports at 68 stations in 16 states as of April 2025. Reuters reported after reviewing the GAO's report. The figure amounts to less than 0.2% of the roughly 219,000 public EV charging ports operating nationwide. Now, I'm going to be real with you. I don't know about how many of these EV charging stations are in other states, but I do know that around 70% of all the electric vehicles that have ever been sold are in the state of California. And I'm wondering how many of those 400 charging stations were built in California.
How big are these charging stations? How big are these charging stations?
Well, they're ports. So in other words, they're not big. It's not a lot. The problem is that I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why they haven't done what they need to do. I mean, Tesla has done a better job at building these things, which, by the way, just goes to show when you let the market do it, it tends to work a lot better.
I can tell you, I went through, I did some traveling this past week, and I always stop at the Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's, right? Buc-ee's is that giant gas station with 200 pumps and the cleanest bathrooms in the world. It's cars only. And they've put in charging stations there. Now, at my count when I was there the other day, it was probably close to 30 or 40 Tesla charging ports, stations, and then about 20 or 30 of the other universal, the non-Tesla ones. So the ones out there for the other EVs, the BMWs.
You mean the useless ones?
Yeah, the BMWs, the Chevys. Now, I don't know the number of EV cars in Florida, but I can tell you it's probably close to 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 cars in Florida is a Tesla.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, here's the thing I like about EVs, especially if you get solar. And this is what we have. So my son-in-law, he drives a long way to work every day. He had a Toyota Tundra. He was spending well over $1,000 a month on gas. And now so when he switched to the electric vehicle, it's now about $300 a month, and most of that is covered by the solar.
That's good.
If you use it right, there's a market for it. But the problem is when the government does stuff like this. Like, for example, you remember the story about they called it the EV graveyard in Chicago in the winter because charging stations, batteries, the cars weren't charging because guess what? Electric molecules, whatever you want to call them, they don't necessarily work real well in freezing weather.
Yes. Yeah, and in extreme heat and extreme cold, it doesn't work. I'm just looking up some stats while we're here. California is the number one sales for Tesla. It's 500,000, just about 1.3 million for total EVs.
Mm-hmm.
Florida is number 2, just under 100,000 Teslas and about 250,000 total EVs. I'm going to bet you
the Golden State and the Sunshine State.
Yeah, that total EVs. I'll bet you most of those are used Teslas because there's nothing else. You might see 1 out of 100 as a Chevy Volt or a BMW I Series or something like that.
Right. What I don't understand is why they aren't investing more into the plug-in hybrids. Because, like I said,
they want to get rid of all fuel cells. That's why. Remember, they want to get rid of all gas. That was
the problem is actually they are coming out with vehicles now that have like the electric vehicles that have the 500. I think there's some out there now with 500-mile range, but the problem is you You can't get rid of it because you've got too many places in the United States where you have to have fossil fuel because, like I said, the batteries won't charge in the wintertime or the batteries won't be efficient in the wintertime. It doesn't work everywhere.
That
But
generation I looked at 2-3 years ago.
Mhm.
The BMW i's, the small ones, and the Fiat 500es. I remember these numbers. The Fiat 500, the full charge round trip, total mileage was 84 miles, and the BMW was like 125. That's
Right.
that's not enough to commute back and forth to work every day in Florida. It's
Right.
which is why there's none here.
Right. But if you can increase that and then you add in the ability to have gas, fuel as a backup or as a part of, so if you're going to take a long trip or something like that, then it is going to be something that's work and you'll reduce dependence on fossil fuels.
And right, and that's why the Prius was a success. Except when you got to 100,000 miles, you had to spend $10,000 on a battery. It's just.
Well, I will tell you, I owned a Prius for a while, and I'll tell you, the only time I enjoyed it was when I pulled away from the gas station because everyone else was dropping 100 bones filling up their car, and I'm like, yeah, 35. But the problem is that when you were driving, it's like you don't be in a hurry, right? And the other thing was, the only way you could go fast, I had my overdrive was leaning forward.
Yeah. Well, it's until the math works out, and it's the problem is the math won't work out because right now you've got let's say you spend 35% on fuel costs. How much are you spending on electricity costs? It may not be the total amount, but it's not you that we're worried about, right? It's we want these to expand and be used everywhere else. There's no infrastructure to support it. And those prices of electricity are going to go up and go up and go up. And that battery price. Now, Tesla, I know, has done they give you like 200,000 miles warranty on your battery.
Right.
Where everybody else was like, yeah, it's a regular car, 30,000 mile warranty,
Right. Well, and the other thing is people don't keep cars. I hate to say this, but the one thing about the lease, and I'll tell you why cars are so expensive, is because when they came up with the idea of the lease, they basically invented a way to sell the same car twice.
And listen, I love the lease. We leased a vehicle for years and years because we had company cars. So the lease vehicle was the weekend car. So we'd get, we'd be driving, the Beamers, Mercedes, and everything like that, Land Rovers. But I was only driving them 8,000 miles a year.
Yeah.
And so I was getting, and a lease, you're only paying like half the cost because I'm getting rid of it. People are like, well, you lose your money when you sell it. I'm like, I know I made my money when I drove it.
Well, the other thing you get is you can deduct the entire amount of the lease as opposed to having to deduct the depreciation of a vehicle of the car when you're buying it. So
correct.
Anyway, all I know is that the fact that they have this program, $7.5 billion, and they haven't even built 400 chargers. It once again is a problem when it's a demonstration of what happens when you have the government interfere with market principles. And I'll tell you, folks, go read Thomas Sowell, please. If you just want to understand why trusting in the free market, I'm not talking capitalism, I'm talking the free market. If you trust in free market principles, stuff works out.
Yeah. Yeah, the market will correct itself.
Yes, it most definitely will. Speaking of correcting itself, some things still in some states have not corrected themselves. And obviously, the idea of biological males in girls' sports has not corrected itself quite yet. But they're working on it. They are definitely working on it. And this is a story. First, I'm going to play the story for you. But I want you to know that these girls, first I'm going to play the story for you so you can hear about what happened. And then we'll talk about how the female athletes engaged are actually handling it.
In today's day and age, this is a stunning act of bravery and, yes, defiance. 2 high school track stars refused to stand on the medal podium after placing in the Oregon State Championship for the high jump. Why? Because the athlete standing next to them was a biological male.
Also in fifth place, the Miami Wells, Leon Rose. Fourth place honors to Sherwood's Reese Eckerd. In third place from Tigard, Alexa Anderson.
Alexa Anderson and Reese Eckerd placed third and fourth, respectively, but tied for fifth was a trans athlete, Leah Rose. The two teens refused to take their places on the podium and turned their backs to it, quietly protesting a system that forced them and their teammates to surrender spots to a trans.
So now, mind you, okay, so you're saying, well, why would they do this for fifth place? So for the person who didn't displace them. And I thought that's what made it so brave, was that they weren't like protesting for themselves. They were protesting for the other athlete who should have just gotten the fifth honors themselves. Now, mind you, I get it. There's no medal or anything involved in getting fifth place. But when it comes to state and national rankings, it does matter. And the point that they're trying to make is that this person has a biological advantage. Well, they were, in this particular case, they were not just, what happened was they were told they weren't allowed to be involved in any of the photos regarding the medals, and their medals were actually withheld. So they basically were disciplined and were for exercising their free speech, for doing what it was that they had every right to do. They didn't have to get up there. You couldn't make them get up there. They decided that they were going to do this. Well, these young ladies are now suing the state of Oregon. And here's a little bit about that story.
I was not aware that there was a biological male on the other team until the very last meet. And I had seen him and it was before I started talking about this, so I wasn't sure quite what to do yet. But I had seen him in the locker room, not changing, but I knew there was a chance that he could walk in while I was changing. So my friends and I decided we felt like we should change in the stalls, which usually we would change out in the open, but I did not want a biological man all of a sudden coming in and seeing me changing, and that could have happened at any time. And it was something that was really alarming because I had seen it in my school bathrooms before, but I had never seen it in a locker room environment. And knowing that was such a vulnerable environment, it was really alarming to me to know that a man could just see me changing at any time. The meet before, there had been rumors of this happening, like other people on the teams had told me that this is happening. And at the time I was kind of just like, okay, like this is weird, but it was like not talked about at all. So I didn't really feel like I should say something. And then it wasn't until the very last meet that then I realized, oh, that is a trans person. And by that point it was kind of too late. I would say.
So the thing to point out here is, for one thing I do want to note, not every trans person is someone who is trying to be a pervert and leer at girls. Having said that, there are some of them who are pretending to be trans who are definitely perverts looking to leer at girls.
You look, get rid of the pervert thing completely. It's the women's locker room. All right.
Well, yeah.
Women in the women's locker room. That's all there is to it. Women's locker room, men's locker room. Now, listen, if these kids had grown up in Europe and it's a unisex locker room, that's a different story. That's Europe wants to do their thing. Europe can do their thing. This is America. We've raised our kids to be separate in male and female for their own protections. And that's the way it's going to stay. You want to put men in there. I don't care if it's a pervert or not a pervert. You're not putting a dude in with my daughter.
Well, and that's the thing is that this isn't even about the whole transgender issue. It's about protecting girls, and and by the way, not just protecting them in the locker room, but protecting them on the field of play. Because, I mean, we've heard the stories, the basketball player who injured like 3 or 4 girls on one team in one game in one half of play. We heard about the girl who got hit in the face playing volleyball, and basically is still dealing with traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
We've got to, at what point is Title IX, and that's what I really appreciate about what the president is doing, is really imposing and saying, look, we created, Title IX was created to protect women's sports, to give women a safe place where they can compete and succeed. It is a recognition that, no, men and women are not biologically equal. We're not biologically the same. and that there are physical advantages that males have, and you need to make, and you, in order to both protect women and give them an opportunity to compete on a fair level, give them an opportunity, a space where they can compete. And to allow biological males to interfere in that, or to be a part of that, is completely 100% undermines Title IX.
Same reason we don't put adults in the locker room with children. It's the same reason. It's to protect the children.
Well, adults who have not gone through a background check.
Well, even so,
Yeah.
But there's escorts and supervisors and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But you don't just have open gym when you go there and you got the 50-year-old dude changing with the 12-year-old boy.
No, that doesn't happen. Not supposed to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad to see that people are standing up. You know, one of the things that the election of Donald Trump did was it made it okay for people to stand up and say, yeah, this ain't right. Because there were a lot of people who just were like, well, I don't know. I don't want to seem bigoted. It's not about being bigoted. It's about protecting kids. It really is. And once again, I'm not, it is less about trans kids than a transgender community than it is protecting kids.
That's right.
And I don't know why people have a hard time with protecting kids. Anyway. All right, Mike, this was one I really wanted to talk with you about. So the U.S. military is investigating Sig Sauer M18 misfires. Now, this is being reported, this story right here, I pulled from the New York Post. Let me pull the story up here real quick. It says, U.S. military investigating whether its new pistol can malfunction and fire uncommanded after death of Air Force guard. It says U.S. military is investigating its new service pistol after the fatal shooting of an Air Force guard, following claims that the gun can fire without trigger being pulled. The Sig Sauer M18, the military version of the popular Sig P320 handgun, has been at the forefront of multiple lawsuits alleging that the weapon can fire unprompted. It's now been pulled from standard use at several facilities after a security service member was killed on Sunday at the F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming when the gun discharged, officials said. I don't know much about this, Mike, and I don't know much about this specific handgun that they're mentioning, but I would really appreciate if you could share a little bit, because you both know about military and how they review this stuff. You also know a lot more about firearms and firearm technology than I do. So I'm gonna hand it over to you to share what you know.
So the Sig P320 has been out for just over 10 years now. 2013, I think it was the release date. 2017 was the first, I guess, recognized complaints by Sig, and they pulled it back for voluntary upgrades. It does not seem to have changed anything. Last year, the Michigan State Police, which at the time we didn't know it was the Michigan State Police, but they sent a request to the FBI firearms laboratory to examine it and find out what any faults were. That was a 12, 13-page document. The FBI looked at it and said, and you can find this online, it's open source now. The FBI said that the firearm has a tendency to discharge during inertial movements, or I think is what they called it. So imagine it's in the holster or you're carrying it, whatever it happens to be. There's a method where the striker firing pin, which is just a firing pin that's pulled back and held by a spring, and there's supposed to be safety mechanisms that hold that in place that don't release until you pull the trigger. Well, somehow during inertial movement, they didn't describe exactly what it was. I don't know if it's jumping up and down or, having the firearm upside down or whatever it may be. It's causing that firing pin to release and discharge. So many law enforcement agencies have did now, although it seems as though Michigan State Police has decided they were going to take some, but that must have been a hell of a party between them and SIG for them to finally accept it. But one of the reasons why we're this was being reported in the civilian world first, right? And everybody
Right.
said, and SIG said, bad user. They don't know what they're doing. Bad user. We didn't see a lot of them in the law enforcement and military world. And I'll tell you why we didn't see a lot of them in the law enforcement military world. First off, to get them to go to a new firearm takes years and years and years, right? So now they're finally into them. When law enforcement and military train, they go on the line, the guns are there, the guns are secure. They load the gun on the line, shoot the trigger, unload the gun, put it back in the holster, unload it. That's it. Cops will carry them loaded at work.
Right.
We started seeing police officers having accidental discharges, okay, when they were using them. The military, unless you're in the combat zone, all of these security forces, all of these people stateside do not carry around in the chamber. It's part of their force protection. They don't carry around in the chamber. They carry either carry magazines out, magazines in unloaded, or magazines in loaded. And magazines in loaded means there's an active threat. We're expecting an attack on the base today.
Right.
That very rarely happens. So in the military world, they very rarely carry them with the in the chamber, unless you get MPs who carry them like that. And that's what we're seeing. This was a security force personnel in the Air Force who had one discharge. Craig, have no idea what happened to this incident. All we know is it fired without being a fire sequence initiated. Okay. So we have no idea how this person was killed, whether it was on a table, at a range, in a holster. We have no idea. However, those are the reasons why we're seeing much later these instances happening in law enforcement and military. Craig, when we go to the mats and we do combatives or defensive tactics in the police world, the gun's unloaded. We don't have the gun loaded for safety reasons.
Right.
So all of these inertial movements might have been occurring on years, and guns might have been misfiring on years, but they've been on empty guns. Okay. So it's not now until they're actually carrying them loaded that we're seeing this happen.
Okay. No, what's the difference between the M18 and the P320?
Same gun. It's like the Beretta 92 and an M9. It's just a military designation.
Okay. All right. Well, all I know is I think it's interesting because these are the sort of intricacies with firearms technology that I think a lot of policymakers don't really pay attention to, but I think are important to understand. Like, what is different about this particular firearm that's causing this to happen? Firearm technology hasn't changed much in the last 100 years.
There's some sort of, again, I'm going with the FBI report said. This is not me guessing now based on what I read in a newspaper. The FBI report said there is a flaw and has something to do with the inertial control of the safeties regarding the striker, the fire striking pin. Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. Anyway, I'll be honest. I was trying to find a gun story, and this was the one I found that was the most interesting. So, and I knew, because I was like, I knew I could go to Mike. Look, it's got the military, it's got guns, it's got firearm technology. Let me put Mike to work today.
I'll tell you, Sig is hurting over this now. Sig is feeling this in the pocket. Gun stores are taking them back and returning them and sending them back to Sig. You've got multiple agencies that have taken them off the shelves or taken them out of the officers' hands. And Sig could get out from underneath this, but they're standing by there. There's nothing wrong with the gun. It's a user problem.
Well, all I will say is this. It's the market working. The market, look, hey, something's happening, and people are like, nope, don't want them no more. And Sig's good. If Sig would own it and fix it, Sig will be right back on top. But until they do, I wouldn't trust their firearms until they were willing to own the fact that there was a problem.
Right. And again, this is only in the 320s.
Right.
Only in the new 320s. If Sig was smart, and I know it's going to hurt up front, but it's going to hurt less than going out of business. They'd recall every 320, give a customer a coupon for another gun, and say, when the 320s are fixed, we'll let you know, and we can sell you yours back at a discounted rate or something like that. But at this point, they're going to have to gut the entire internals of this and design a new internal system to match what they have. And because these are not going to work. They're not going to sell, and it's going to drive Sig into bankruptcy. And
I'm going to tell you, Sig, I hope you're listening to Mike right now, because I know it's going to hurt. I know it's going to hurt initially, but I'm going to tell you what, you got some loyal folks out there whose loyalty right now is they're like, really? I tell you what, not only will you have them, you'll get the people who are questioning you. They'll be there for you. Because you know what? I mean, even companies make mistakes. Own it, make up for it, fix it, and you'll have customers for life.
Yeah, no, listen, it's rampant now, Craig. You can't go to a gun store or a range or a training class and bring a 320. They won't let you bring it.
Yeah, okay, that's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah.
So, all right, so here's one that, and I'll be honest with you, I'm a big fan of. I'm all for legal immigration. My wife and her whole family immigrated to the United States from Fiji. I'm a big fan of immigration, but what I'm not a fan of is companies who basically forego American workers and do these H-1B visas in order to bring people from other countries into the United States to take jobs. And JD Vance actually, I'm trying to remember. Basically, JD Vance is basically, it says here, JD Vance blasts Microsoft for replacing Americans with H-1B visa workers, meaning I'm saying, it sounds like he's saying that they're firing workers.